It happens every old night. And I ain't never met a riverboat dealer that could ever be a friend of mine.
I haven't.
Nope. Summer heat never treats me kind and leaves trouble on my mind. So I'm bidding farewell, putting in my notice, and I'll see you at another time. This highway does not know my name, and I don't care.
Nope.
No, I don't care.
Not even a little bit.
Headed my way for another place, and I got 3 good tires.
Y'all already starting on me in the comments. I was right on time. Just a white
line gypsy getting out of Mississippi with just enough gas to get there.
Low budget live, actually live. Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday to you. This is the podcast for Monday, November the 11th. And just want to start tonight by saying happy Veterans Day, man. I always, Veterans Day, I lost my granddad, my mom's dad, Richard Peters. We lost him 5 years ago. I guess in 2 weeks, it'll be 5 years on the dot. And Veterans Day always makes me miss him just a little bit more than I normally do, man. He was a hero of mine. And the only time, this was one of the craziest things about my granddad. He was proud to be an American, proud to have served his country. He would tell you that over and over and over and over. But the only time he ever got on an airplane, and there are so many stories like this, I'm sure, with family members, for those of you low-lifers out there listening, but the only time the man ever got on an airplane, the only time was to go to Korea to fight in the Korean War. That was it. That was the only time my grandfather, who lived to be 90, grew up in very rural southern middle Tennessee, and he only time he ever stepped foot on an airplane was to go to Korea, man. And he would tell us stories all the time growing up about Korea. And it was crazy as we got older, he would give you a little bit, more and more details of the things that they saw and how that actually was. And it was awful, at times. And he loved his brothers in the military that he made and friends. And he would tell us stories of that. But on Veterans Day, he was just always, school programs growing up, local, we have a parade here in my hometown. He was just always going to be there, had his Korean War veteran hat on, just so proud to have served. So happy Veterans Day. We should say, thank a veteran every single day in this country, not just on November 11th. But I am glad that we, at least, you see so many people take a pause. So I want to open with that today. Happy Veterans Day to all you veterans. I know I got a lot of veterans that listen to the show, and thank you for defending our freedoms and all that you've been through, gone through, and we appreciate y'all. So we really, really do. So and shout out Daddy Richard, man. That was what we call my granddad, Daddy Richard. And he was you talk about somebody that took me fishing, man. Whoo, we did some bank fishing, we did some creek fishing. He had a little John boat there for a while, but man, he always made sure I got on the water. If my dad couldn't take me, we were out there. So he absolutely loved it. One of the hardest working individuals ever. So, but a veteran first and foremost. That's what he was most proud of. Other than his kids and grandkids, man, he was proud to be a veteran. So, welcome, almost 80,000 on Low Budget Live so far, man. I'm excited about this one for so many reasons. I'll say this. I'm not excited at what led us to our guest being on tonight when we get to him here in just a little bit. But we've got a special one joining us. And I think that I think y'all are going to enjoy it. This guy he's just amazing. And he's certainly, just as I talked about my granddad being a hero, this guy's one of my fishing heroes from way back. So had him on before, and look forward to catching up with him again. I want to remind everybody, if y'all are if y'all have kept up with the traveling circus any number of years and you keep up with me and the Alabama Bass Trail, things like that, my buddy Stupid Dumb Darian, he's not so stupid anymore. We've had our back and forth on the internet over the years being silly, but he's like my little brother. He's one of my best friends. We try to talk every single day, and he will be going with Y'all Sweet Tea. You know, he left TH Marine back in 2021. He started his own deal. So inspirational, but he will be on Shark Tank. He and his partner Brandon this Friday night, 7 p.m. They're going to be on Shark Tank. So y'all be sure to tune in, man. Check it out. He's one of our own. He's from the fishing industry, and the boy has done good, to say the very least. But he'll be on there Friday nights doing a big premiere watch party, and so go check it out. See how he does on there, chopping it up with Mark Cuban and the likes on there, and I think it'll be a good time. Be interesting. I've talked with him. He can't say a lot right now on how it went, but he's told me a little bit how the filming process and everything went as far as that goes. And so crazy to hear, how long they film, and then they condense it down to 10 or 12 minutes. But I think the entire thing takes over an hour right now. So pretty wild. But man, I could not be more proud of that dude. I've got to say that. I've known him since he was very young, and to see what he's done, man, is something else. So Stupid Dumb Darian with the Y'all Sweet Tea, they're going to be big time. I forget, he told me how many million people watch Shark Tank, the numbers they estimate, and it's silly. So if you want a Y'all Sweet Tea hat, or you haven't tried Y'all Sweet Tea yet, you better get on the website this week before Friday and get some, because I have a feeling it's going to be sold out after Friday night for a while. So Sweet Tea Boy, as Noah, my boy Noah Dickinson in the comments there, Sweet Tea Boy, big time. And we had a gentleman that fishes the ABT when I was fishing with little Trey Swindle. Trey used to fish with Darian. So the first year little Trey and I fished the ABT 100, this fellow walked up, and he didn't know me that well, and he was talking to little Trey, and he said, "Where's Sweet Tea Boy at? Where's Sweet Tea Boy at?" So we like to refer to him as Sweet Tea Boy over there on the Alabama Bass Trail. So he's done well though, man. You talk about a guy, he's just got a great backstory to his life, and I can't wait to see him on there Friday night. So not that they need the views, because I think I want to think he said like 30 million households an episode or something crazy, but it's a very exciting time for my buddy Darian. So you guys be sure to check that out. And I want to thank some folks real quick before we get into this conversation with one of my fishing heroes and a legend of this sport. Real quick, fishtips.com. The folks at Fish Tips want to help you catch more bass. You can use code LBL10 to save on your first tip there, fishtips.com. You got guides, you got professional anglers sharing, sometimes they get real detailed. Sometimes it's just broad strokes. Sometimes you might even get on there and get, hey, you better go to this bank right now. But everything available on there. A lot of fantastic anglers. Go check it out, fishtips.com. Gillfishing.com. If you're in need of a great rain suit, if you're in need of some fantastic outerwear, they've got a little bit of everything on there. And I can tell you, I have not been disappointed with anything that I've picked up from gillfishing.com, but they want to give you a gift. Any purchase right now, you can use code LBL promo, and you're going to get a free gift at gillfishing.com. ProGuideBatteries.com. That code is LBL10. ProGuideBatteries.com is where you can find some of the best lithium batteries in the game. Their AGMs are amazing. They've also got a new line of chargers as well. ProGuideBatteries.com, LBL10, to let them know you are a low lifer. And last but not least, hang the imaginary banner. I don't even have it up tonight. Express Boats. I'm running that X21 Pro LE this year. It's got the 250 Yamaha show, one of the fastest hole shots in the game, more tackle storage than you can shake a stick at, 96-inch beam. Don't just take my word for it. Go to an Express dealer and take a ride. Go climb around in one. You will not be disappointed. Express Boats, building excitement since 1966. All right. 103,000. Look at us go here. All right. I'm going to go ahead. Hang on. I have to address a question real quick before we bring our guest on. So, we referred to my wife as the triple threat. That is her name. And Scott, I did make a video post yesterday. How's the triple threat diet going? So I do want to address this real fast because I made a video being silly yesterday morning, but I walk into the kitchen, guys. And of course I've talked about my heart condition and whatnot that I've had going on. And I'm running a little overweight right now, but I walk into the kitchen yesterday morning and Marissa Duncan looks at me and says, I'm putting you on a health diet. That was how she said, a health diet, but I'm putting you on a health diet. And I made a video throwing it out there to social media saying, all right, fellas, if you'd walked into your kitchen and you looked at your beautiful bride and you said, I'm putting you on any kind of diet, do you think you would have kept your teeth? Because I bet you wouldn't have, because the shoe's on the other foot. Your bride would not be happy about that. And it was, it was a 100% vote across all social media that would be a terrible idea, which she thought it was hilarious that she was on me like that. And she said, I'm just trying to keep you around for a little bit longer. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, Scott. I'd almost forgot this diet. And yes, today was day one of the health diet, and I'm starving to death. I could eat through my arm right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this guy right here has won over I went to county school, so to the best of my calculations, over $3 million in bass fishing across the FLW Tour, across the Bassmaster Elite Series. He has won the FLW Tour Angler of the Year. He's won the Bassmaster Elite Series Angler of the Year. He has multiple wins. He has 45 plus top 10s. He's made more championships than you can shake a stick at, whether that is the Forest Wood Cup, which is a tournament I missed, by the way. Such a great tournament, and the Bassmaster Classic. He's been on the Kellogg's Frosted Flakes box, and we're going to bring him in. He just announced his retirement, and that's what I said at the first of the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation, but it also makes my heart hurt a little bit because this is one of my guys right here that I've always looked up to. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him in. Clark Wendlandt. Hello, sir.
How are you doing, Luke?
Buddy, I am doing well. I see your giant deer in the background. We'll get to that because in your video, it's the thing that jumped out at me. You're like, I'm going to be spending some time on the ranch chasing these deer. But man, I gotta tell you, there are a lot of things that I expected to see. But this bass fishing world gets crazy, Mr. Wendlandt. It is definitely a little bit different than it was, say, back in the 90s and early 2000s. For a lot of different reasons. And the world's a lot different now. But last week when I saw that, I got to tell you, my jaw hit the floor. That was one of the last things that I expected to see. And I guess I just got to open with, is this something that you'd been thinking about leaning towards for a little bit, or was this just, all right, it's time to just kind of happen? How do you come to that decision?
Well, no, I've thought about it for a long time. And hey, thanks for having me. I mean, it's always an honor to come on with you. And I enjoy talking bass fishing, and you always got so many good points, and we fished together back on FLW. So I've been looking forward to this.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I thought about it for several years actually. And I'm not going to sit here and candy coat it at all. Forward face of sonar had a little bit to do with it too.
Okay.
And, I honestly thought really hard about fishing MPFL because of their stance on it. But something just told me that it just wasn't right. I mean, I'm not talking about the circuit. I'm just talking about for me personally. I've been doing it 33 years, and I have been more than blessed to do what I dreamed about as a little kid, watching Bassmaster, watching Bob Cobb, Ray Scott, watching all the heroes of bass fishing that were my heroes. And I did it for 33 years, my whole working life. And hey, it just felt like it was the right time. And so it's not any health related. It's just, I've got grandson and a granddaughter on the way, and it's just time to not travel quite as much.
Well, I completely get that on those grandbabies, man. I'm not there yet, but my wife brings that up a lot though. We've got our daughter Harper's 23. She's like, we're getting close. I'm like, well, she's not married. She's not even dating anybody right now. I'm like, well,
okay.
Here's the deal. yeah, I guess we're getting the age range though. Marissa's a little older than I am. So she's like, yeah, I'm ready for grandbabies. And I listen, we still got kids to raise. My youngest is 13. So we're still trying to get them out of here.
You still got a ways to go.
We do, buddy. We indeed do.
Yeah.
So
it is amazing though. People tell me all the time, man, grandkids are so unbelievable. And they are. I mean, I just can't. I just think about him every day, and I think, gosh, I love that kid. He is so great. So yeah, that's the best thing going for me right now for sure.
Isn't it interesting? My dad always said, when he got to take me hunting and fishing, that it was very special. But then when he got to see, the junior versions of me, that it was just that much more, man. He's going all in. He's big and building bigger, nicer shooting houses. I remember my dad taking me on my first youth hunt, us riding in a Honda Big Red 3-wheeler and sitting double in a single ladder stand, freezing to death. And now my boys sit in the Taj Mahal, it's funny. It's funny how things have changed.
It has, but it's amazing what you remember, like most people's hunting memories are mostly when they were a kid. And, that time frame wasn't that long, but granddad had a big part in it for lots of people. And I can't wait to be a part of that for him.
Oh man. Yeah. I started the show talking about, being Veterans Day and wishing all the veterans happy Veterans Day. But my grandfather, he passed away 5 years ago, my mom's dad. And, he was 90 years old when he passed, but the only time he ever got on an airplane was go to the Korean War. That was it. It's the only time. He was very simple Southern man from Southern Tennessee. And, he would take me fishing a lot, but he didn't hunt a lot. But I actually, I found a picture of him today. He had this 8-point mounted in his house, very, very small deer by today's standards, but he called it an 8-spike, which was hilarious. And he shot it with a 30-30, and he had the 30-30 my whole life between its antlers, right there in his kitchen. And he would tell us this story all the time. It's the only time he ever went deer hunting that I know of. And he killed it on the ground, and we'd tell us this dramatic story, but it's funny. You're right. Like I remember hearing that from him so much when I was a kid. That's one of my favorite hunting memories. And I wasn't even with him on the trip. He had killed that deer long before me, but yeah, I so many things with my dad in the woods, and I hope my boys are getting that with him and with me too. That's for sure. But going back to the retirement, I know that you mentioned forward facing, and you wrote a very passionate letter, really to the sport, but to bass, and that was leaving the St. Lawrence River, where you were inspired to do that.
Yeah, it was on the way home from the St. Lawrence. And the thing about it is that for me, that was my passion coming out, and what I think is a mistake in bass fishing. And the reason I think it is, and I was really thinking about how do you really articulate? How can you even tell anybody that? And I really think it all boils down to the guys of the past, the Rick Cluns, the Denny Browers, Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, Clark Wendlandt. I guess I'm honored to be in that. Kevin Van Dam, Jay Ellis. I mean, I can name them for just keep naming them.
Oh yeah.
Greg Hackney,
Basil Bacon.
I mean, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
What they are good at is that I think makes the sport so phenomenal is putting their boat in on a body of water that they can know nothing about for over a year. I mean, they may know something about it, but more than likely not. And they can find enough bass to beat your butt in a tournament. And the mystery is what drives the passion. The mystery to me, I mean, that's what's fun about deer hunting. I like the mystery. The mystery is that giant buck that I've never seen anywhere. Nobody's ever seen 200-inch deers out there. I've never killed one that big, but he lives out there somewhere. That's what I'm going for. And that mystery is there. When you know he's there, it's not nearly as fun to me. And so the mystery that very, very few guys can do what those people I mentioned, and there's a lot more you and I both know, can do that. And I just think that now there's very few that can handle that. You know, the year Kevin came along, there was maybe one or two that are still talked about. The year after that, there's maybe one or two. And now the technology game exposes a good bit of the mystery. And I think the mystery is important to what we do in bass fishing. I think that there's something that needs to be unlocked. You know, now you put your trolling motor down on a point and you see bass, or you don't see bass, and you can see how they react to your bait, and can you catch them or can you not? And then you move to the next point. Well, it used to be, it wasn't like that. When you and I were fishing FLW, I mean, you had to fish the point. You had an intuition to go to the point, and then you'd move to another one. It wasn't just about, oh, I don't see a fish here, I got to move. I don't see it. I mean, people can say I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm really not. I've done it at the highest level. I've used live scope. I know what it looks like, and I don't believe it's what the highest level of our sport ought to be.
Let me ask you this, because you were with Garmin when it first came out. You've done a lot of work with Garmin over the years, and I can remember, you know, all of us that were with Garmin at the time when it came out, you know, being front and center for this. Did you ever think that it would get to the point where it's at now and it's dominating so much? Because I had one of the first 5 or 6, Mr. Darrell put one on my boat. I did the ICAST media release. Wade Middleton's crew's down there filming it. You know, I did the Garmin Force trolling motor one year, but live scope another year. I think there were 4 or 5 of us down there. Darrell actually put it on my boat at the final FLW event in 18 at St. Clair. I didn't even know what I was looking at. It looked like spaghetti to me. I turned it off during that tournament, by the way, because I didn't know. I didn't know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
But did you ever think that it would get to this point from there, from 18 to where we're at now, where it's just dominating?
I actually kind of thought it would. Now, it might not have been 18. I probably got it also about the same time you did. And maybe it was 19. But during that season, I remember thinking to myself, this is not going to be good for tournament bass fishing in the long run. Now, is it going to help me right now? Well, absolutely. I mean, Garmin was my sponsor. You just brought that up. I mean, is it going to help me? Yeah, it's going to help me. I mean, listen, I'm trying to win bass tournaments. I'm trying to make a living doing this. So I'm going to do it. But over time, I just started reflecting and understanding how powerful it is. And there's never been anything like that that's taken over before. There's nothing. You can't give me one instance. Live bait would be close, but we can't use live bait. So, you know, if you could have live bait, you know, you've seen the guys on shiner fishing in Florida. I mean, it's amazing. They catch 5 to 8 pounders every cast. I mean, it's,
night and day.
It wouldn't even be close. The guy would just dominate it. But there's nothing like that in bass fishing. So when something comes along that's totally one track where you got to do only that, I think that the league owes it to the fishermen to take a look at that and say, I don't think one thing should dominate. We need variance. We need Tommy Biffle and Jason Christie coming from Oklahoma being muddy water guys. We need Jay Ellis, Clark Wendlandt, whoever from Texas, being grass fishermen or whatever. We need a guy from up north.
Let's talk about that. Sight fishing.
Clark Wendlandt. Sight fishing. I mean,
that's what I think of with you and Jay Ellis, man. That was how I patterned what I wanted to be in fishing, was especially y'all two though, and Alton Jones, and you got me obsessed with sight fishing. Not to cut you off, but at Beaver Lake got me obsessed with sight fishing. Yeah,
and it's so interesting too. I mean, we could go so many different ways, but that's how when Shaw Grigsby and Guido Hibden, when I watched them sight fish, I thought to myself, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn how to do that as good as they can, and I'm going to do great in tournaments. And for a while, it was amazing. I mean, it paid off to me, but it wouldn't even have happened without Bassmaster Magazine and the TV show. I mean, I saw what they were, and I wanted to be that.
Let me ask you this from a perspective of, and it is hard to get an identity now. I will say that. Like I'm not against live scope. I actually enjoy using it, but I will say, covering the tournaments that I do, that it obviously dominates, but it is hard to get an identity. You're not going to be a Jason Christie necessarily. Your personality better shine when you're doing that to a certain extent. But I think that if there are young guys out there watching this crew that dominates right now, they're probably looking up to them though. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that just like I looked up to you and so many other heroes, I don't think I can discount just because it's what it currently is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's what it currently is, but that's what I think's a shame. So, but I mean, you know, I can go so many positive ways. That's the one thing I wish wasn't going on right now. But you know, it is. And you know, I'm going to go the direction I'm going to go, and they're going to go the direction they are. And it's all good.
How do you put and I've said this on the show before, but we kind of let the monster out of the box, right? And, you know, people promoted it and promoted it and promoted and then all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, and it's out there. And now it's at every level, not just the pro level. So if you don't, you know, ultimately, I see guys like, you know, Randy Blockett, he talks about it nonstop about getting rid of it. I feel like if the state or a federal level doesn't step in at some point, you know, and I'm not saying I'm for that at all, but I'm saying I don't know how we ever put the monster back in the bag, so to speak, because we expose it. Even if you wipe it out, it's like MPFL, you know, who I work for, and hey, they stood up for what they believe in, and good for them. That's, you know, my thing is this though, you're going to have anglers that have to go fish those fisheries where everybody else can use it, but the guys in the tournament, if that makes sense. So how do we put it back in the bag without it being banned at a state or federal level?
Yeah, I wish the state or federal level would step in. I was hoping that New York or California or somebody that was pretty liberal would come in and do something about it, but that doesn't seem to be happening. And so I mean, if it was me and I was running the sport, like, you know, back when Ray Scott, you know, ran it with an iron fist, I'd shove it back in the bag so fast it'd make your head spin. And I'd tell the electronics companies, sorry guys, that this isn't what our sport was meant to be. That's just what I would do. You know, but saying that, that means the money doesn't matter. You know, the money that come from the electronics companies, I've been saying all along, there's no way Bass can make this decision based on the money from the electronics companies. That cannot happen.
That can't factor in. That's like factor in. No, I agree with that.
Well, and the reason it can't is because it's too important a decision. And so in my mind, that can't factor in, but I'm not so sure it didn't. And you and I can smile about that. Yeah. I don't have any information that says it any different way, but I got to think. I mean, Bass is trying to control it by schedule. I mean, that's what they're going to do this year. They're going to try to control it by schedule. And I'll tell you right now, that ain't going to work. Now,
no, it's not.
It might work on an event or two, but it's not going to work very good.
Yeah, but what we're seeing now with it, where these guys are using it basically everywhere, right? Like we talked about Jason Christie being a flipper and a muddy water fisherman. Well, what's been the most astonishing to me in the last couple of years with live scope is the guys that have gotten so proficient with it really shallow. Because you think, oh, suspended fish and fish out in the middle of the lake that never got fished for. Well, now guys are picking apart cypress knees with it. That's where, regardless of schedule, I think you're going to see a lot of people. They might not dominate. You still might get your brains beat out by Greg Hackney or Jason Christie if you're fishing cypress trees, but it's still the advantage goes to that guy that can certainly pick them apart and see them. There's no doubt about that.
And I hate to say it, but Jason Christie and Greg Hackney, there's not going to be a whole lot of domination there. It's going to be the, you know, Patrick Walters of the world. The ones that you can use live scope the best are going to be the best. I mean, it's the way it is. That's the sport we got now.
Listen, I'm going to let you say that about Hackney and Christie because both of those dudes scare me to death, Clark.
hey, they scare me to death too. They scare me to death too. But
they're the most intimidating humans in bass fishing.
They are the most intimidating, and that's why I think the fight's worth having, because that's why I fight them, because I think those guys, they are literally, and we're picking out two, but there's more. Those two are so great and so good. And I've fished with them. I've been in the boat with them. I've fished at their level. I've fished tournaments against them. I know how good they are. They should be dominating. That's the way it should be.
And they have at times, that's for sure. They've dominated over the years in their career. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see where we're at in another couple of years. That's for sure. I do like some, you know, MPFL took a stance against it. I like MLF's kind of hodgepodge mashup they're trying, you know, in those invitationals, the former FLW tour. You can use it a day, you can't use it a day, then you can use. I like it. I think we're going to see a good variety of bass fishing in those, because you're going to have to, like, if you're going to compete, you're going to have to be able to do a little bit of everything. And I think, whoever wins the Angler of the Year in a circuit like that is not just going to be 100% one way or the other. I think that's going to be interesting to see. Saw a list of some names coming to MPFL potentially. I think it's going to be fun for fans to watch over there this year for sure. Just keep adding to what they got going on. We're going to have a lot of the same guys coming back and a lot of new faces as well. And I think that's going to be a good time to just see them. Hey, we know for sure for 6 events, you're not going to watch them do it. You're going to watch them break down bodies of water the old school way, if you want to call it that. I hate saying old school like that, but it is in a sense, just like you said, if you can't pull up on a point anymore and see that there are 3 dots swimming around over there, and it brings back, you're going to have to chunk and wind a little bit, but it's certainly interesting. And I think BPT, the way they handled it, I think Bass put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And look, I said MPFL, I'm not for the ban necessarily. I had my boss on this show, Clark. We talked about it. I'm the word ban kind of makes me nervous at times with anything in the outdoors, but I do think Bass I just thought it was comical, the screen inches and all that. I thought that was silly. They didn't really take any sort of stance on it. You can't use the transducer you can see 3 miles away with the Garmin saltwater or whatever. But and hey, those trolling motor brakes are terrible to get those things off the boat.
Get them out of here.
Get them out of here. They must not have sponsored it. But
I agree. And I will say this: I hadn't said a lot about BPT, and I do like what they're doing. At least you're recognizing that it is something, but that we need to be able to fish without it. So you're seeing both ways. And I kind of think that's good. Yeah.
And they're doing BPT, it's a minimum. You're going to get to use it 3 hours for an entire tournament day. It's going to play a small role next year. That's a big step for sure. Without a shadow of a doubt. Let me ask you this, since you're walking away, and I know this probably had nothing to do with it. It's a coincidence for sure. But last week we had this announcement, or week before last, of this no entry fee deal. And I talked about it on here last week. I actually, the title of the podcast was Pro Anglers Win and Lose with this announcement, because I felt like they did. Being a veteran guy that's been in this for over 30 years, what were your thoughts on that decision? I think we can both agree no entry fees, a great scenario, but when you read the fine print, maybe not so much for a guy like yourself, who's been one of the most consistent anglers. We talked over $3 million in career earnings. Might be hard to run that total up with those paybacks.
When you really look at what they did is, it had nothing to do with my decision, by the way. Nothing. Okay. I had already made it before that. So, but when you really look at it, it is a great step. It's what we've all wished for. It's why the guys left Bass and went to BPT, one of the big carrots that was out there, several years back. But the problem with it is that it rewards 75th through 100th place. That's who is winning, because those guys were getting no check, and now they're not paying a $5,000 entry fee. So they're basically getting $5,000 a tournament if you were paying a $5,000 entry, they're getting their $5,000 back. And to win $5,000, you got to finish 19th or better. Well, here's the problem. It's hard to finish 19th. A great tournament sometimes is 25th, 30th, 40th.
40th, yeah.
And you're not winning hardly anything. Sometimes just barely squeaking in, making a check at 50th, or even getting the consolation check at 65th is feels good. You did something. You worked hard. You found enough fish. You did good. And all that's kind of going by the wayside. I think the middle, if you look at it, the guy in the middle of the field is losing. The guy at the very top, that has a great year, I'm not so sure it matters for him. And the guy at the very bottom, he's winning big time. 75th or 100th winning big time.
I thought of that angle.
Not paying entry fees. Instead, they were funding the rest of the guys that were doing well before. Now they're not having to pay any entry fees. So I don't know. They're basically saying that this is going to be a sponsor-driven game, and the only, the guy that doesn't have that many sponsors really has to thrive on winnings and has done well enough to do that. He's the one that's in the most trouble.
Oh yeah. And you and I know a bunch of those guys, a lot of them. To me, that's really the ideal career. If you can mix and match a few good sponsors in there, but if you're just a check getter, just an absolute check getter. I saw Zach Burge make a post about this. Of course, it, doesn't impact him over there on BPT, but he said, man, for him, he relies on being a check getter. He's like, that is my deal. But I think about guys like a Wesley Strader on the FLW free. Wesley's one of the best check getters of all time. Like he just shows up in the top 50, right? Like he's going to land with 14 pounds a day in his live well before he leaves the hotel.
That's true.
Feel like most of the time, but there's so many of those guys over the years that have fantastic careers that makes championships. When you're a check getter, you're going to have a chance at the big one every single year. So I think it certainly does hurt those guys, but I think I said this last week, but it is going to be more of a sponsor driven game, but really, and you've got a fantastic sponsor stable and you have over the years, man. You've always represented some great companies. I know you've had some changes recently, but you've always just like the cream of the crop. I feel like you could always see next to your name. Always some really great companies, man, and for good reason. Like you're as professional on the water as y'all are off the water. You work hard promoting for those sponsors, but hasn't it really always been about sponsors? Even if you're one of those check getters, if you're going to truly make a living fishing, isn't it more about sponsor money than earnings for the most part?
Yeah, it is absolutely. But does that mean that I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it always has been. But I think it also benefits the social media guy that's got big followings, because they get, they figured out a different way to have a bunch of income from, whether it be social media or whether it be YouTube, whatever it is. And that guy, he's making money there. And he's got a few sponsors also. Well, checks aren't that important to him, but it's the guy that the checks are important to.
Yeah.
I was a guy that checks were always important to, because I mean, you know what I mean? Checks matter in tournament bass fishing, because when you make a check, it doesn't matter if the last place in the money, you come away buoyed up, feeling good about yourself.
There's no doubt. Yeah. There's no doubt. No matter what if the check line's 70th out of 100th, and you make the check cut, no matter what kind of week you're having, you feel like, all right, I did what I was supposed to do. I made that cut line.
Did something. You did something. I mean, and if you finish 71st, I mean, 1 ounce difference, whatever. Yeah, you're down in the dumps. That's just the way it is.
Crushes you. Yeah, crushes you. Have you talked to a lot of your fellow? Because I've been fortunate to talk to several Elite Series guys, and I feel like it's mixed reviews. Is that kind of what you would say from some of the guys maybe you talked to?
On the entry fee thing, I'd say it's a little bit on the negative side, but everybody's kind of saying, hey, this may be the greatest thing ever, and it may be. I mean, we don't really know. It's the whole thing's just a grand experiment, really, if you get right down to it. So I mean, I think, I mean, if I was still had planning on fishing, I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, let's just see how it goes. It might be great. It might not. I mean, it sure enough be great not to have 45,000 in entry fees, dude. I mean,
there's no doubt about that.
Nobody can deny that. So
no doubt about it. That the frustrating thing for me, and I talked about on here though, is and again, it doesn't really matter to me, but I try to be a voice for so many anglers that I do know, and maybe they're afraid to speak up or whatnot. But I think if you get on FS1 and you show the payout and you show that a professional bass fisherman's getting a $500 check, that was where I was like, all right, boys, you need to take a look back to when Mr. Clark Wendlandt was on the old Kellogg's box at some of those payouts. What was the entry? Do you remember what the entry fee was in the year 2000 in the FLW Tour?
I have no idea, because back in those days, some of our deals hinged around those entry fees. But so I don't really. That's right. I didn't actually pay a lot of entry fees then.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, there was one year, I don't remember which one it was, but 200 grand for first, 100 for second, like 75 for third, 60 for fourth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was like a classic or a Forest Wood payout every tournament. And man, that was when you could bank some money then. I mean,
some of those Chevy Opens, remember, like St. Clair, they pay 100, like 10 grand down to 100th place. There were some wild ones then.
That was the glory days. I hate to say it. Those were the glory days.
Well, that's something that I brought up last week is have we seen the glory days? And I really do think payout wise, unless something crazy happens. And listen, I had people comment last week, Clark, telling me they'll never listen to me again because I hurt their feelings by telling them that professional bass fishing might not be as, as popular as it once was, for non-endemic sponsors that kind of make those payouts possible to the fishermen. But man, those late 90s and early 2000s starting to look better and better all the time, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, Rob, you know Rob Newell pretty well, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Rob Newell,
Yeah.
Rob's a real good, great friend of mine. And he and I have talked about it just endlessly. I really believe, as far as the big payout days went, when you could win the big, like even if you finished down the pack a good way, you won a lot of money. I'm not sure we're going back to that.
No. And you know what? It's like, this is a very simple comparison here, but it's like when you go to Walmart, or in my hometown, we got a Kroger grocery store, Clark, and you go in there and there ain't no checkouts open, and you got to check yourself out. And they've been doing it to us for years, right? And they're like, not only are you a paying customer, but now you're a dadgum employee. Once they started cutting them back, and they're like, look, these boys will keep showing up.
Exactly
Once they got us used to coming, and we're going to pay. We're just going to pay less and less and less and less, and we're going to keep raising these entry fees. Once they saw that everybody were basically crack addicts, so we keep showing up, it ain't ever going back, man. Come on.
Right. That's right.
It's like us paying $3 a gallon for gas. It's like, all right, they're used to it now. They're used to it.
Right.
We'll keep it there. That's what I always say, man. Once we gave in to the self checkout, it was over.
Done.
It was over. Everything.
We were done.
We were done right there. All right, let's talk this career, man, because I throw the word legend around with you, and I always have, and man, it was an honor to get to compete against you for a few years in the FLW tour, and I know I've told you this story, and I probably told it on the podcast when you were on before after you won AOY, but I'll never forget being at Lake Hartwell's the first year I fished the tour, and they were bedding everywhere. And I was finding them like crazy. The first day of practice, my dad called me and was just checking in, that afternoon. And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's going pretty good. Like, I've got a lot of them found and doing what I like to do. I'm throwing my floating worm and, and I'm finding them, and I'm sitting in this pocket. And I remember watching Clark Wendlandt come out of a pocket I'd already been in and run. And I told my dad, I said, never mind, I'm screwed. He said, why? I said, well, the guy I basically learned to sight fish from by watching him on TV, just when I came out of the same pocket I just came out of. So welcome to the big time. And,
well, I appreciate that. That's, I love, I mean, sight fishing really, it got me a long way in the sport. And I don't even hardly do it that much anymore, occasionally, but, we touched on some of the negative or drama or whatever on the sport, but there's so many good things about this sport that,
no doubt, man,
I'm so passionate about. I think this is the greatest sport in the world. And that's why when I would say something about forward facing, or if I ever wrote a letter to Bass, Bass knows when the letter's coming from me, it's like going to be pretty fiery, because I don't talk very often, but if I talk, it's because I really passionately feel it.
No, and you've lived it. You've lived it for many years, and you've represented the sport, man. Let's go back to 2000. And did you guys know going into that season, because you won Angler of the Year in 97, I believe, the first year of the FLW Tour, you won Angler of the Year, correct?
Right.
You won the points that year. Was that your first year as a pro, or had you fished the invitationals before that?
No, I started in 92. I won the Wendlandt All-American that got me into
That's right.
fishing the invitationals. Right. My very first BASS tournament was an invitational, was on the St. Lawrence River, which is where my last tournament was too. So, which was a cool, that's my favorite place to fish in the world. So, but yeah, so I had been fishing just bass until 97. I think 97 was my first year.
Okay. So go back real quick, because I apologize. I forgot about the All-American, but are you saying the All-American? I did not know this. And all my bass fishing nerd, like being obsessed, being a fanboy for so many years since I was a kid, the All-American got you into the invitationals back then?
Well, yeah.
Or did you just take the money from that and go?
I did,
Or
but
was
what
it a
happened
tie-in?
was is that, you know, so back in those days and you know, the Redman days, what happened was is that they had that regional. And so the
Mhm.
regional was a truck and a boat, and I
Yep.
won the
Yep.
regional.
Okay.
That was kind of the aha moment for my wife that said, she said, you know, I was thinking I'm going to quit after this unless something major great happens. And I won that. And so that gave me the money. I had a
Okay.
truck to compete, you know, drive around the country in, and then, you know, sold the boat and ended up, you know, that's kind of how I really started my career. And
Okay.
then the All-American followed in June. That may have been in the fall. All-American followed, I think, in June, and I won the All-American in Muskogee, Oklahoma on the Arkansas River.
Amazing. And I did know you were an All-American champ, but I forgot that in all my, when I was reading off your stats. You've got too many stats. It's your own fault. I missed that one. But so that kind of springboards it. And then this new thing, the FLW tour comes along. Lake Okeechobee is the first one, correct? 97. Is that Steve Daniel won that one? Or
You
did
know what?
Sermon win that one?
The year I started FLW, it was the second year.
Okay, 96 was the first year.
96
Yep.
was, and I didn't fish it that first year. You know, I'm hearing about it. Everybody's talking
Yeah.
about it. So the very first one I fished was on Okeechobee, but it was in 97.
Okay. Okay.
And then I finished like fifth or I mean third or eighth or I don't remember, top 10. So I had a good tournament, and you know, that's kind of how I started fishing FLW, and then kind of what happened. I fished both. You know, back in those days, you could fish both. So
Right. A lot of guys did.
a lot of guys did, and I fished both circuits. And then along, I can't tell you the exact year, but maybe 99, maybe 2000, I got Kellogg's as a sponsor, and then Bass. What happened is that Bass had Bush Beer as a sponsor, but then they made you put Bush on your,
Remember
it was
that.
on your, probably on your jersey, but maybe on your boat.
On the boat and jersey, I believe.
On the boat and the jersey,
I
right.
believe it was both. Because a
That's
lot of
exactly
guys
what happened. And so
you
I'm
had to
like,
split
man,
then.
I got this great sponsor, and it's Tony the Tiger, and you're going to make me put a beer sponsor on Tony the Tiger? I was thinking Kellogg's not going for that. And Kellogg's was by far my biggest sponsor at the time. So I was just like, I think I'm just going to have to opt out. I did it. They didn't ask me to. I just decided, hey, this sponsor's big enough. And that sponsorship lasted, honestly, till about 2009, I think. 2009. And then I got Cabela's in 2009. And that's when I won Angler of the Year in 10 or 9 or 10 again, which was my third Angler of the Year.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of how all that went. You know, it wasn't that I wanted to leave Bass. It was that I felt like Bass kind of forced my hand.
Yeah, I remember the Bush Beer fallout was a big one. There were a lot of guys that were upset. When the FLW tour came onto the scene, I mean, and this was before, you know, all this social media craziness and you know, the constant need to talk about things like, you know, this is episode 295 of this. So Clark, I've talked about a lot of bass fishing, obviously, and I'm grateful to get to do so. But what was the feeling like when that kind of came on the scene? Because I remember in the 90s, because that's right when I was in my fandom, right? You're just starting out watching it on ESPN, but you had Clun fishing both, you fishing both, Van Dam fishing both. I mean, Van Dam won an FLW Angler of the Year while he was fishing the Elite Series. You had so many guys. Swindle was over there. So many guys doing both. But what was the feeling then? What was it reminiscent of because the BPT Elite split was visceral. There was a lot of toxicity in the air. But was that, did that feel like that at the time? Like Bass and Operation Bass were at each other's throats, or how was that?
It did not feel that way to the fishermen, I don't think. At least it didn't to me. And what happened on all that is that, yeah, guys were dabbling in both. And and when we talked a minute ago about the glory days of professional fishing, but what it did was, and it raised Bass up a whole lot also, you know, because after that, then came McKinnis and the ESPN deal, all came after that. But what happened was during that time, we were winning the most money we've ever won. It didn't all mean sponsors had to be, and it brought those non-endemics into the industry. And we had never seen that before. I mean, that was unheard of in bass fishing. Nobody had a deal that was away from the, fishing tackle or fishing boats or whatever, some kind of fishing sponsor. So it raised the level a lot, whether you loved bass, loved FLW, loved them both, you just a fishing fan, whatever it was, it raised the bar a lot.
It did. And I remember going to several Bassmaster events, top 100s when I was a kid. I remember going to Pickwick to one that Mark Menendez won when I was in high school. But the first ever FLW tour I went to, and you got the tent in the parking lot at a Walmart, and it was when it was the top 10 and the top 5 back then. And it was a show, buddy. Like it felt like you were at a rock concert almost. It was the new generation. And I think that's actually what they called it, was the next generation or new generation. You had Charlie Evans up there doing his thing on stage, and they really did. And I hope younger fans of the sport understand some of this history at times, but wrap boats would have never been a thing if it wasn't for the FLW tour. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
They started out as painted boats.
Yes,
the first couple years, and they couldn't give them away after it was done. Once you had, they lost on that deal big time. So then they figured out the wrap deal, and that's where we went from there.
Yeah, they were building Rangers in these crazy colors to match these sponsors, and you had to fish out of them on the final day. But man, I'll never forget those days, and I think it's so important, man. If you're watching this tonight in 2024, a ton of those tournaments are on YouTube. You can go back and watch them, and just go check out the coverage, watch what they were doing and chasing around these Fujifilm boats and the Kellogg's boat and all the Pop-Tarts and Chevy, all these things, man. That was such a golden era of bass fishing. Did you know before that, when you win Angler of the Year in 2000, and you end up on the Kellogg's box, which I said I've got one at my mom and dad's house somewhere. I've got to go try to find it, but I had it in my room. I had yours and I had Denny Brower's. Denny was on, I think it was Wheaties, and you were Kellogg's.
That's right.
Yeah, I think Denny, because Denny did, I remember, dude, I think Denny did David Letterman.
Yeah, he did. You're right.
No, you're right. You want to talk about bass fishing being like the golden days? Maybe let's talk about some of that. Crazy. But did you know going into that 2000 season, were they dangling the carrot of the being on the Kellogg's box to you guys? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I kind of think everybody knew that if you won Angler of the Year, that was kind of the carrot that was there.
Okay.
And the whole thing is you asked about what was the feeling back then, and the only feeling that was negative in those days was the fishermen. Even though these payouts were unbelievable, the one big mistake that FLW made is they didn't think that the name of the fisherman, in other words, Kevin Van Dam or Clark Wendlandt or Denny Brower, meant a thing.
Mm-hmm.
What Irwin Jacobs decided is, he was the owner of the Minnesota Vikings back in those days, and he got soured on professional athletes, which is understandable because, they make a whole lot of money. And so what happened is he got frustrated that we're having to pay him so much. So if we put somebody in an EverStart shirt, he wins the tournament. It doesn't matter what his name is.
Yeah.
But that was his big miscalculation. If he wouldn't have made that calculation, he may have ruled until now. He may still, that organization may rule the whole fishing world. It may not be Bass, but that was his mistake, because what Bass figured out and Bass understood, or maybe not figured out, but understood is that the personalities do matter. And, the Swindles, the Scott Martins, the Jason Christies, the Hackney, we could go on and on and on. And, those guys, those personalities, they meant something.
Yeah. They built a brand around you. They let you be your own. And I remember you had that big moment there in the 90s and early 2000s. And then whenever I started fishing FLW, and even before I did, you started seeing guys making that shift back to the Elite Series. Then the Elite Series was announced, I guess 2006, maybe something around there. And guys started slowly requalifying and sliding back that way. And that was always the number one thing I can remember being at FLW events with FLW employees when someone's going, hey, I just got to go where I can promote myself and my sponsors better. Because
right.
even late into the deal, long after the Walmart thing had gone, it was still super brand sponsor focused, I guess, so to speak, for FLW, more so than being yourself. And I can't say that personally because look, obviously I didn't win $1 million in pro fishing the few years that I fished, but like FLW did give me a platform, and they did, hey, Luke, you want to go do radio interview? Hey, Luke, you want to do this for the magazine? Hey, Luke, do you want to do, they let me be myself. They let me be goofy and showcase my personality. And whenever I started getting into social media, it was kind of colliding with that same thing. And so a lot of the things I have to this day, I have the FLW family to thank for that, because they let me be myself. But that being said, though, again, angler, those personalities for years weren't the focus, that's for sure. And Erwin didn't care. he didn't at all. And you're right. He was if it was Walmart, it was Walmart. He didn't care who was wearing the Walmart jersey.
Care. You're right 100% about
that. He wanted to tout handing out the biggest payouts, which he did, though, man. $1 million in so many tournaments. Scott Suggs won the first one. So crazy to think about that he won $1 million in one fishing tournament.
Yeah,
now we're arguing over a $500 paycheck.
Yeah, that's right.
But I still think, man, I said when MLF went the no entry fee route year one, I wondered if it was sustainable. That was something that I said out loud many times. And I hope this is, and I hope this is step one of a multi-year plan where they're going to get it to where it needs to be. And look, until you jump, you never know, right? Like they had to kind of, you got to rip off the Band-Aid, so to speak. And I beat up on them a little bit last week, because I did feel like it was almost not thought out, maybe a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of folks that are disgruntled in bass fishing. There's a lot of, again, toxicity. There's a lot of bickering back and forth. And I feel like this was like, all right, this is something we can give to the anglers to maybe calm this down. And unfortunately, it just brought on more scrutiny, but they'll get sorted out. I have no doubt. They've been in business a long time. They'll figure it out.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I do want to say is that the people at Bass, I've said this many times. I think there's never been a better group running Bass ever, personally, because I just think they're good people and they want truly what's best for you. And I remember very distinctly about 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, Progressive was coming on as Angler of the Year sponsor, but nobody knew it. And they told the fishermen, they said, hang on just a second, hang on. Don't do anything with your jersey yet. Wait as long as you can before you do anything, because we may have an Angler of the Year patch to put on there. And they ended up doing it. And then after all the payouts had been given out, they swooped in and they paid AOY money all the way to, I think, 40th place. It might have been 50, but I believe it's 40th. And nobody even acts like that even happened. I mean, it was $8,000 to 40th. And I mean, they gave us a ton. They negotiated the deal. Did they get money too? Yeah. It's a company. I mean, they're a company. They're trying to make money.
They're a business.
The thing about it is they gave us a lot at that point. And I think Chase wants the best for us and wants the best for Bass. So, I mean, what more can you want?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, what does retirement look like for Clark Wendlandt? So you're a competitive dude. So you laying the rods down in any bass tournament. You mean to tell me you're going to go down there at the ranch and hang out with the grandkids and all that's awesome. And I'm jealous, especially of your deer hunting escapades, because I keep up with you, Clark Wendlandt. But you're not going to fish tournaments anymore. You're not going to jump in some team tournament or something. Come on now.
No, I'll probably dabble. I mean, I've fished Tuesday night tournaments around home here, just like everybody, like you probably do in Alabama and like other people's do in South Carolina. I mean, I'm going to continue to do that. I do it with my brother or my son-in-law, and eventually I'm going to do it with my grandson. And I may start dabbling in some team tournaments, because those are fun. I mean, we've always, they've always tried to make team tournaments happen at the professional level, and it's never worked really. But if you just want to enjoy tournament bass fishing, that's the way to do it. Go fish
no
some
doubt
team
about it.
So
we've got somebody in the comments right now giving me a hard time that runs one of the best team tournament organizations, Miss Kay with the Alabama Bass Trail. She said, so we have FLW to thank for your craziness. Yes, Miss Kay. You never had. She calls me the voice of the Alabama Bass Trail, Clark. She's and my MC
awesome.
role. I'm the voice. So yeah, you have FLW to thank for that, Miss K. No, you're right. working with the Alabama Bass Trail. This is my first full season working with them. I got to work a couple events last year, and then I got to fish her Alabama Bass Trail 100s. And it is the heartbeat of bass fishing, period, end of story. Whether it's, Bass Champs, Texas Team Trail, some of that stuff. I mean, it's what it's about, man. It is truly, you can throw all this craziness aside that we talk about in pro fishing, and guys are still going to get up and go fish a tournament with their buddy on Saturday morning, no matter what the pros do, right? There's no doubt about it. That's going to happen. Will you be doing any? I know you've been fantastic about filming a lot of things over the years. I know you worked close with your friend Wade Middleton. Any desire to be in television or produce some, put some more content out there, more than what you already do, since you're not going to be having a full tournament slate?
Yeah, not really. I talked to Wade the other day and said, listen, man, if you figure out something you want to do, and whether it's something with Yamaha, or because we've done the turkey bass smash over the years. Yeah. And Polinick told me the other day, he said, man, we still got to defend the turkey bass smash. And I'm like, well, I'm in on the turkey bass smash. We can do that anytime. It doesn't matter. My schedule doesn't matter anymore. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, I might do a little bit of that, but I don't have any great plans. I'm tournament bass fishing, I'm not going to fish it at the highest level. I may fish some, but I don't really have any big plans there. I may do a little bit of TV. I've done some coaching over the years. I call it coaching. It's basically most of the time working with young guys, but older guys also. And I've left some of that because I just didn't have time. But I'm talking about kind of high level stuff. A lot of times where I get in the boat with somebody and just, let them fish, and then more or less critique them and say what I would have done different, or what I might have done, and kind of treat it like a practice day for a tournament, and then talk about what they got at the end of the day. And, just something that, because that's intriguing to me. I love tournament bass fishing. That's what I like. And so if I can help somebody be better at that, then I may do some more of that. But I don't have any great plans.
Well, that sounds like retirement to me, dude. I'll be honest with you. Not having plans is a pretty good plan, if you're asking me.
It's amazing. I'm not going to say it's not. It feels pretty amazing to me right now. So.
That feels like an 800-pound gorilla is definitely off your shoulders. If you can go, the plan is there's no plan. I love that.
Yeah, no plan, not having to get a boat ready, not having to worry about sponsors for the upcoming season. I can go hunting when I want to go hunting. I don't have to think about that anymore. I've still got 6 or 7 sponsors that, that I'll continue to produce some content for. And, that's great. I've always enjoyed doing that. So, who knows what got in store, but I'm going to tell you something. It's been an amazing ride for me in tournament bass fishing. I got to thank tournament bass fishing, but Ray Scott started it. The fishermen from years ago, the Rick Cluns, and Rick Clun was kind of my fishing hero. And, lucky enough to know him really well and fish against him for a long time. And he's an amazing guy anyway. The Bob Cobb, you watched it, and you watched me when you were kind of coming up. I watched Bob Cobb talking about Denny Brower or Rick Clun or Guido Hibden. And I just could not wait until the next Saturday morning came and I got to watch that again. And that's what got me fired up and got me fueled up to do this.
I love it, man. Again, if y'all are watching and you have no clue who we're talking about, which I feel like if you're watching the show, you probably do. We go watch some of those. I think it's Lynn Dollar on YouTube.
Yeah, Lynn Dollar's got
all the old stuff on there. And they're all, man, the old FLW, especially the ESPN FLWs with Jerry McInnes. He's hanging out of a helicopter, calling people on the cell phone during the final days. It's some of my favorite fishing memories. Watching those shows, man, learned so much. All right, I want to end with this. Do you have a narrow miss or a regret in your tournament career? Do you have one that haunts you as you're winding down this amazing career? Do you have one you think about like, oh man, like a classic or a cup or, one tournament that sticks out to you?
I got a lot, actually. Anytime you finish second, you're mad. Literally, that's the way I used to be early in my career for sure. I was terribly upset if I finished second or third. And Rob Newell, I remember him saying, hey, second or third's pretty darn good, man. You're gonna have to be happy about that. That you're not gonna finish first all the time, and so that meant something to me. But yeah, the not winning on Ontario in the last, say, 3 years when I really was pretty dialed in and I had top tens there, that one sticks out. But probably the biggest one was a FLW that we had at Lake Travis here in Texas. There was 2 different ones, and I made top 5 in both, but I should have won the first one literally easily. And I just got in my own way. I had too many fish, and I went to too many fish to not, and I didn't win. But that one probably comes as the biggest near miss, the one that I regret the most, probably.
That's probably about as close to the home as they've ever got.
That's home. Yeah, that's as close to home as you get.
I'm gonna say that's pretty. I was in the second one they had there, that North Rose one. Yeah, I fished that one down there. That's a wild place.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
It's a cool lake. Cool lake. I've always wanted to go back since that one.
It's actually better than it's ever been. So it's
oh, really?
Good. Yeah.
No kidding. Well, we probably shouldn't have said that out loud, Clark. Now you'll have all kind of people out there. They'll be running around.
Let them come. I hadn't fished it in a while, but it's got some grass in it now, so it's kind of interesting. Whoa. It's a different lake now.
Really? Like hydrilla?
Hydrilla.
Really? No kidding. Cool. I can't remember when we were there. I feel like it was high. It had been really low, and it came up the time we were there, and there was a lot of flooded trees and things in the water. But it's such a cool lake, man. Where else can a Guadalupe bass, state bass?
Yeah, a lot of Guadalupe. That's true.
A ton of them in there. But and then giant largemouth. It is a bizarre fishery right outside of Austin. So very cool. Well, man, look, I've kept you long enough tonight. I really appreciate it, Clark. Thanks for everything you've done for the sport. And man, it's been a pleasure getting to know you over the years and getting to compete against you, have my, butt kicked more times than I care to admit by Clark Wendlandt. But man, I appreciate you coming on again and sharing your time with the low lifers.
Well, hey, it's an honor. Thanks for having me. And who knows, we may do another one. You want to reflect on the industry in about 3 or 4 years. I'm going to keep up with it. I'll know what the heck's going on. Don't worry about that.
Oh, I know that.
I'm really hoping that the young kids of today can take care of a really amazing sport, and because that's really who has it now. And I say young kids, the 20s to 35-year-olds. That's the ones that are doing the best right now, and it's always going to be that way. Those guys are going to be old here in a few years, and they're going to be reflecting on the new kids coming up, but it's an amazing sport, and I just hope that guys will look at the history of the sport and learn something from the history of the sport and know who started the sport. It was some amazing fishermen that took big risks, and that's to do what they do for a living. And I mean, heck, that's why we're able to do what we do.
No doubt about it. You gotta know where you came from to know where you're headed, right? That's very important in life. Ladies and gentlemen, the legend, Clark Wendlandt. Thank you, Clark.
Thanks, Luke.
Appreciate it.
All right, man.
There he is, a living legend right there, man. I really do appreciate that. It means a lot to me. And I see y'all. I was trying to, I see a lot of comments popping up, and I apologize if I missed comments and questions for Clark there. And can't thank him for taking the time out to join me tonight. That was as soon as I saw his announcement, man, I wanted to be sure to get to have a conversation with him before he gets fully retired. And his plan is to have no plan. So I love it. I love everything about that plan. Sounds pretty good to me. That is for sure. I appreciate y'all tuning in each and every week. 295 episodes. There's actually more than that if you go back and look at some of the old ones that before I really started counting, but we're at like 295 in this old world. And holy cow, that's a lot. That's a lot of y'all listening to this bearded redneck run his mouth. I know that. So much appreciated. I don't take that for granted at all. Again, be sure to watch my dude Darian, old y'all sweet tea on the Shark Tank Friday night, 7 p.m. We're going to find out, if they throw him off the set just for being an idiot because he's an idiot. Okay. I doubt that's going to be the case, but be sure to tune in, man. I joke because I'm super proud of him. Y'all check it out. I'm going to take you out with some Biloxi Blues. We will be back next week, either live or not so live. I see Josh Butts in the comments, co-host of the Duncan Butts Spectacular. And Josh, I need to call you because I got plans for our next Duncan Butts. I have Josh Butts. I'll leave you with this tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He says, if someone ever talked crap about the Alabama Bass Trail, I'd have some words with them. And then he said, Clark is about to fish the ABT 100s. I don't know. I'd like to see it. All right. Going out with Biloxi Blues. I appreciate y'all. 142,000. See you.
I never could make it last. Spanish moss, a Civil War ghost. Well, I'm gonna leave them in the past. Any direction, Lord, I'll be fine. It don't matter, east or west. North, south, wherever the wind blows.